Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, we will begin with an invocation, and I invite the Reverend Iliesa Naivalu, the Secretary General for the Fiji Council of Churches, to come forward.
First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the Vanua of Navatulevu, Naua, Betororau, the traditional owner and custodian of the land we are on. Because of what we see, hear, or feel in the nature that surrounds us, we gather today more conscious than usual of the possibilities of renewal and restoration, of bringing to our people a sense of new life and new growth. Let us be mindful of God's presence in our midst and of God's power to do something in us, in our lives, in our organization, in our business, as well as in this summit. I'd like to reflect on the text from Isaiah chapter 43, verse 18. Remember not the events of the past, the things of long ago consider not. See, I'm doing something new. See, I'm doing something new is my theme. My reflection. A church minister once telephoned an antique dealer and asked, "What goes into being an excellent restorer of old furniture?" The antique dealer answered, "Imagination, creative imagination. You have to see past all the layers of paint chips, see past the marks and scars. You have to look past all the faults in the wood and the broken pieces." He added, "You needed to be able to see the piece of furniture in its original beauty. Your eyes and mind need to have imagination, and you actually get kind of excited about the possibilities that you see beneath the surface. Then you have to have a lot of time and energy. These things don't just happen overnight. It takes time. It takes disciplined energy." Then he said, "Love is more important than skill. You need to love the piece of furniture and its possibilities." Dear leaders, ladies and gentlemen, the analogy is simple. At times we feel that our organizations, our businesses, is like an old furniture, corroded and coated with layers and cruddy paints. We feel that it is layered with baggage, junk and scars. We at times bog down with uncertainties, and we tend to run around looking for solutions. And even the solutions don't lead to real sustainability. According to the text, God intends to do something about it, about the crud, about the scars and breakdown in our individual lives, in our families, in our businesses, or our organizations, in our countries, yes, in our south region. God says, "I make all things new. I restore that which is old, corroded, and broken, and make it anew." In the course of your meeting, remember, only God makes the impossible possible. Let's come to God with a word of prayer. Ke mami dhubo sombu e na wakaroroko vi kemuni na kalau chova na kalau ni leobunga. Kalau wani buli lo malangi na pura-pura na vika kedenga e sine ikina. Sa dhuba loi ke mami e na lo mai ke mami. Ta dhake wakayalo. Ka wakatusai na ngusu ke mami ni sa kemuni nga na kalau. Ko ni sambula ko ni sa tiko. Rasaan dambe sombu na nomu ni tamata. Ko ni kadivira andingi tekira mera vilutaki. Yana vi matani tu. ka wakina na be ministry enana ni mami yasa ni burongo ki mami ba na bina wale ni soli na mbula rasa ya mbula tigo mai ka sati na mataganda inda na mbose kim sabar rabitaka we kimuni na we ka ke sare na garabi we ra liu ta na mbose we na liu ni mbose ka wakina we ke sare na matadaka kim senga ni reirira ia ravagador na non reitabi na kenan dina tau doko kena lon tau doko me adu kina na mbose ngo me adu bina we ka ngan revi oni varoro takikina na kalau. We also give you praise, Lord, for the lives of our distinguished guests and members of the summit as they are about to engage themselves in the discussions and deliberations for the betterment of our region. I beseech you, Lord, to bless each one of them and bless them with good health, sound mind, and the energy to achieve the expected outcomes. Bless your servant, the chair of PIDF, fellow leaders and all members of the summit, as well as those of the officers and staff who are carrying the burden of putting this summit into success. And this we will pray in no other name, but in the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord and our Savior. Amen.
Vinakabakalevu Reverend, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now have our garlanding ceremony, and I invite the young ladies to please come forward to do the honors this morning. Please let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, ladies. Our religious leaders and traditional leaders, our distinguished speakers for our opening ceremony, the President of Nauru, His Excellency Baron Wanga, the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Honorable Enele Sopoaga, the Acting Chair of the PIDF Conference, Honorable John Maneniari, Secretary General of PIDF, Mr. Francois Martel, our Pacific Island leaders, Your Excellencies, Honorable Prime Ministers, and Honorable Members of Parliament, Heads of Delegation. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, Your Excellencies, distinguished moderators, panelists, co-sponsors and partners, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings. We will now begin with a welcome address, and to deliver this, I invite the Secretary General of PIDF, Mr. Francois Martel.
Thank you for this invocation, Reverend Naivalu. Your Excellency, Baron Divavesi Wanga, President of Nauru, the Right Honorable Enele Sosene Sopoaga, Prime Minister of Tuvalu, the Acting Chair of the Pacific Islands Development Conference, the Honorable John Maneniaru, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Fisheries of the Solomon Islands, distinguished heads of delegations, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and country representatives, Your Excellencies, friends and partners of the PIDF, ladies and gentlemen. Waka nui nui vinaka, a blessed welcome to you. Afiomai. Welcome to Nandi Bay on the occasion of only the second Leaders Summit and Conference of the Pacific Islands Development Forum since its charter was adopted in September 2015. Our first Leaders Summit was held in Honiara in the Solomon Islands 3 years ago under the theme Stewardship for an Healthy Ocean and Healthy Nations, as a Pacific lead to the first high-level UN conference on oceans held in New York. We were then barely 10 months old. On this now 4th year anniversary, this second summit and conference held here in Nandi Bay is under the theme Strengthening South-South Cooperation for a Resilient Pacific, as a Pacific way forward on the 40th anniversary of the UN Buenos Aires Program of Action on South-South Cooperation that was held in Buenos Aires just a few weeks ago. The conference will be held over the next 2 days, with today dedicated to the thematic part leading to a roadmap on South-South cooperations to be advocated by the PIDF as part of its programs. Tomorrow, we will witness the handover of the chair of the PIDF conference, and the focus will be on our members and key stakeholders to debate and decide on the achievements and the challenges of the organization in both our strategic directions and our institutional affairs. The Pacific Islands Development Forum remains the youngest regional organization in the Pacific. It is a unique Pacific voice in the regional architecture under a multi-stakeholder governance system that since its inception has challenged the geopolitical status quo established by the former colonial powers following the independence of the Pacific Islands around 40 to 50 years ago. The PIDF's charter mandates the organization to serve as the Pacific regional counterpart and platform for South-South groupings with a focus on sustainable development and poverty eradication. Over the last 3 years, we at PIDF have made strong efforts to develop partnership with Asia-Pacific and South-South international and regional organizations with the aim to assist Pacific Islands in innovation, lessons learned, best practices for technology transfer in order to accelerate the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and SDGs in the Pacific. We thank in particular the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation and its dedicated team in supporting our organization in telling the story of the islands and South-South initiatives, as we just launched our first Pacific South-South in Action publication. Most recently, in March of this year, we held the first high-level Pacific consultation on South-South cooperation with high-level representation from the public, private, and civil society sector from across the Pacific. 8 of the 12 PCIDs in New York were represented in these deliberations. Participants unanimously agreed that South-South and triangular cooperation are important and relevant for the Pacific, and that the principle of South-South cooperation should be nurtured and sustained in the context of solidarity and mutual respect, and furthermore, that South-South cooperation is increasingly relevant for implementing the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development. South-South cooperation is also inclusive of intra-Pacific Islands and inter-SIDS collaboration between the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific stakeholders, and that the Samoa Pathway, adopted in 2014 in APIA, should be the first beacon of implementation through South-South cooperation for the Pacific Islands. An important point raised at the Pacific consultation, that there is a huge knowledge gap in the Pacific Islands in terms of knowing what the expertise is in the Asia-Pacific and the Global South, and there's a lack on our side of proper assessment from the Global South countries on what the key priorities are for the Pacific Islands. During the Pacific consultation, it was recommended that the PIDF should bridge that gap by providing information to existing institutions and act as a regional implementing agency for South-South cooperation. One of the key recommendations was to have an annual meeting and platform for knowledge sharing on ongoing South-South cooperation in the Pacific sub-region that should be convened, and here we are today. South-South cooperation between nations is also important, but so is South-South cooperation between organizations, institutions, universities, and individuals. And it remains important to continue developing modalities to assist in this engagement, such as the South-South Network for Public Service Innovation and the Alliance for NGOs and CSOs in South-South Cooperation. The PIDF stands at the ready to support these efforts and the Global Plan of Action just endorsed in Buenos Aires. This Leaders' Summit remains the main forum for updating leaders and stakeholders on the latest development and achievements of the organization, but also to paving the way for next year's work program focusing on renewing, developing the strategic plan, putting in place its members, national structure, and setting up its regional development fund, trust fund. With limited resources, we have not yet been successful in reaching these outcomes, but we need to persevere to ensure PIDF has the impact expected at the national levels. The Leaders' Summit, to be held tomorrow morning, will gather the 14 PIDF members, representatives, and senior officials to take stock of the work of the last 4 years, oversee its progress, debate on the challenges, and decide on major policy and strategic issues moving forward. PIDF remains dedicated to work through and support national sustainable development boards operating in each member state and territory, reaffirming the PIDF difference in tools, approach, and delivery mechanism to reach all levels of society in the implementation of the Agenda 2030. Our motto being to think regionally and to act nationally through genuine partnerships. As we face a climate emergency across the Pacific Islands, we remain strong advocates and a true Pacific voice for climate ambition, urgency, and action globally. Beside building on the success of the Suva Declaration at COP21, PIDF will continue to promote leadership in climate action and making bold but critical for our survival stand in true Pacific solidarity with our most vulnerable atoll nations and communities. Thus, the importance of a strong message to the UN Secretary General Summit to be held in New York in just a few weeks. In closing, I would like to dedicate our summit and conference to an old friend and beacon of the tourism industry in Fiji, Dixon Sito, who passed away recently and whose funeral is being held today in Suva. As our deliberations and dialogue get underway, our thoughts are with his family on this day. May he rest in peace. Again, welcome to our 2019 PIDF conference. I am glad you could join us on the continuation of our journey. I thank you. Vinakavakalevu. Merci beaucoup. Fafitai telelava. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me great pleasure to invite the acting chair of the PIDF conference, the Honorable John Maniniari, Deputy Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, and the Honorable Minister for Fisheries to deliver his keynote address. Please give him a round of applause.
Excellencies, the Honorable President, Prime Ministers, Head of Country Delegations, and your representatives, Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Development Forum and your staff, members of the Diplomatic Corps, partners and friends of the PIDF, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome to all of you attending the 2019 Pacific Islands Development Forum Leaders Summit and Conference. I bring greetings and apologies from Prime Minister Manas Sokovare, who is unable to attend this conference and the Leaders Summit tomorrow, as our National Parliament commences its sitting today. Prime Minister Sokovare wishes for me to convey to this august body his strong support for what PIDF stands for and hopes to achieve. He looks forward to great outcomes from this conference and the leaders' meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, We are gathered here for the next 2 days to review the work of our organization, its achievements, challenges, and struggles, and importantly, to discuss and agree on the way forward to further lift the work of the organization to new heights and in line with its original principles and functions. The theme of this conference, South-South Cooperation for a Resilient Pacific, provides the platform upon which we will explore new ways of thinking, working, and forging new partnerships between and amongst ourselves and with our developed partners to jointly pursue sustainable development and poverty eradication in the Pacific Islands. The government of Solomon Islands, as the current chair of the PIDF conference, endorsed the theme of this year's conference. The underpinning driver for the theme is Resilient Pacific, to be achieved through the strengthening of South-South cooperation among our nations. Achieving a resilient Pacific means safeguarding the blue continent and enhancing green growth among our islands. 2 years ago, as the chair of the PIDF conference, we co-host with Fiji the first high-level Pacific Blue Economy Conference. I was participating then in my capacity as the Minister of Fisheries for the Solomon Islands. I was impressed with the global nature of the conference, the quality of the panelists and speakers for what turned out to be a great event. More importantly, it provided a set of recommendations for a way forward in mainstreaming the blue economy in the Pacific. I am certainly looking forward to a similar outcome from this conference on the subject of South-South cooperation for the Resilient Pacific. Solomon Islands is one of the 8 Pacific SIDs who actively participated in the Pacific consultations on the South-South cooperation, jointly coordinated by PIDF and the Asia Pacific Office of the South-South Cooperation, convened in Nadi a few months ago. This consultation identified unique issues and priorities for South-South cooperation within the context of the Pacific Islands. We also contribute our experiences in preparation for the UN conference, celebrating 40 years of the Buenos Aires Program of Action on South-South cooperation held in March in Buenos Aires. However, only 3 Pacific Islands countries were represented at that global event that set forth the future direction for the South-South and triangular cooperation as key tools for sustainable development. South-South cooperation represents an additional platform developing countries can use jointly in their collective pursuit to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Our countries can learn from the many lessons and experiences from other developing countries, institutions, research centers, civil society, and the private sector enterprises. These lessons will help us in developing better models for South-South cooperation that are underpinned by collective commitment and solidarity. We strongly support the Pacific Islands Development Forum's role in providing the regional platform for South-South and triangular cooperation for the Pacific, and Solomon Islands and other MGS countries are already beneficiaries despite PIDF still being in its infancy. For countries across Melanesia stand to benefit from a US $1.5 million capacity building project on green economy and renewable energy that is jointly driven by PIDF in partnership with the Global Green Growth Institute and funded from the Korea International Cooperation Agency, COICA. PIDF is also working with other partners, including the UN Development Partnership Fund, managed by the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, to ensure Pacific countries benefit into the long term. There is one important feature of the PIDF architecture that no other regional organization has. The eco-status accorded to government, private sector, and civil society. It is my view that this eco-recognition platform for three key partners in development at the national level has been missing ingredient in sustaining effective and durable partnerships nationally. It is my view that the South-South cooperation is key to the Pacific region's long-term prosperity. It can only enhance in the islands and in the Pacific collaborations. At this conference, we look at South-South cooperation, its benefits and challenges at the global level, and synthesis its relevance to the Pacific. We will explore the Pacific and SIDS partnerships and draw from these lessons as we apply the blue and green economy. At the final session, we will focus on island resilience, with particular emphasis on the role of multi-stakeholder partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, our deliberations and conclusions at today's conference will assist our leaders as they seek ways to further strengthen South-South cooperation among our nations. In closing, let me wish us all a very successful PIDF conference and PIDF leaders meeting. It is now my honor and privilege to declare the 2019 PIDF conference and the PIDF Leaders Summit officially open. Thank you all for your attention.
Please, another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you sincerely to the Honorable Acting Chair of the PIDF Conference and also the Deputy Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome now the President of Nauru, His Excellency Baron Wanga.
Prime Minister of Tuvalu, the Honourable Anele Sapoanga, the Deputy Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, Honourable John Maneniaru, Honourable Ministers and Heads of Delegations, the Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Development Forum, and your staff, members of the Diplomatic Corps, partners and friends of PIDF, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Mo Yoran, a very good morning to you all. It is indeed a great pleasure to join you all at this 2019 PIDF Leaders Summit and Conference here in such beautiful settings. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the government and people of Fiji for their warm hospitality, and also express my gratitude to the Secretary General and his staff for their excellent arrangements. Our theme, South-South Cooperation for a Resilient Pacific, is a very important one. There is no doubt that our islands are on the forefront and front line of global changes, and that we face increasingly complex and more serious challenges. Such are these threats that it is not only crucial, but has also become mandatory to scale up our efforts towards building our resilience if we are to continue to survive. For small islands like ours, there is no sustainable development in our context unless we are resilient. At the same time, South-South cooperation has been gaining momentum in the Pacific ever since PIDF convened the Pacific Consultation on South-South Cooperation towards the Buenos Aires Plan of Action earlier in March. This was followed by the high-level United Nations Conference on South-South Cooperation, which was held in Buenos Aires on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action. There is also increasing recognition and widespread acceptance that South-South cooperation is an essential instrument for overcoming development challenges and can effectively cut across sectors and across borders. And in short, it has been credited to help strengthen regional cooperation, power up trade, foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and growth, amongst other things. But while extolling the many virtues of South-South cooperation, I should, however, acknowledge that this form of cooperation is not new for the Pacific. Indeed, we have been helping each other out in the spirit of the Pacific Way, even before the phrase South-South cooperation was coined. In fact, historically, Nauru began practicing South-South cooperation soon after it gained independence, just over 50 years ago. From that moment on, Nauru employed and trained thousands of Pacific people in our phosphate industry, our airline and shipping services, as well as in our public service. This cooperation continues in many forms, even until today. In another example, if we look at the establishment of our very own PIDF, some would say that this was also founded on the principles of South-South cooperation to support the region's countries and economies meet their own development aspirations. And this will become evident as we share our experiences over the next 2 days. In Nauru's case, I'm pleased to note that more recently, we have had our own share of South-South cooperation amongst our Pacific brothers, which have resulted in modest but positive developments. Some of these more successful examples included the agreement with Tuvalu to provide boulders for their coastal protection work. This project will be extended to the Marshall Islands in 2020. Another classic example of a success story is the voluntary teacher scheme which we have enjoyed with Fiji for a number of years now, and which has been expanded to justice, health, and finance sectors. Speaking of Fiji, I want to recognize the leadership of our gracious host at this point, especially in the area of climate change. Climate change, as we all know, is the single most biggest threat to our lives. And much energy and resources have been expanded on building our resilience, our resistance to withstand its effects. Now, Prime Minister Bainimarama has been working hard in recent years, including during his presidency of the Conference of Parties, or COP, to the UNFCCC to draw the world's attention to our desperate fight against the effects of climate change. We can take pride in our collective cooperation efforts too. The Pacific Seeds, along with our island sisters and brothers, and the Alliance of Small Island States, or AOSIS, demonstrated the true power of South-South cooperation when we forced the rest of the world to join the Paris Agreement. These are just some of the successes that we are proud of and want to build on. Ladies and gentlemen, South-South cooperation has been proven to be an effective tool in delivering real, lasting, transformative results. So let us use this opportunity that has been given to us to take stock, reflect, share views and experiences, learn from one another, and together discover and explore homegrown solutions that will help us fulfill our development goals. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask that we give another round of applause, please? We now welcome the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver his address, the Honorable Enele Sopwanga.
Talofa, people of the Pacific, Excellencies, heads of delegations, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Your Excellency President Wanga, the Chairman of the Forum, of course, Pacific Island Leaders Forum, Deputy Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, who I understand now is the acting or the Chairman of PIDF, Secretary General Sir. I have a great pleasure to have been invited to say a few remarks at this opening of this very, very important meeting, the Pacific Islands Development Forum Conference here in Nadi. Let me first congratulate His Excellency, the Chairman of PIDF, Deputy Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, for your recent elections to office again, and to wish you all the best in your future political career. I myself and my honorable delegation, the Foreign Minister Tauklina Finikaso, and my other colleagues, Special Envoy, Honorable Mackenzie Kiritome, who are here with you today, are waiting to be elected back into office. So we are missing in our campaign as we attend the PIDF meeting. So Honorable Inia, thank you for inviting us, but we've come squeezing our time, our space to come here because of the importance of this meeting. So, but we are going to continue to campaign through internet as we sit here in Nadi. But at the outset, allow me to extend my sincere gratitude to the host, the Prime Minister of the government of Fiji, Frank Bainimarama, my friend, our friend, for inviting us to be here. We come here because PIDF, as we have heard, is a very, very critical platform and a very, very important amplifier of our small voices from the Pacific. And that's why we have traveled from Tuvalu to be here, despite our very busy schedule as we prepare to host the next Pacific Island Leaders Forum in Tuvalu, but also to hold our general elections. I want to reflect further on the topic of this for this summit, the South-South cooperation for a resilient Pacific. I remember some years back, I think Dr. Jimmy Roger would recall also, and some other colleagues, in the Pacific Conference, the SPC processes, we were, and further beyond that, the Pacific Island, the then called South Pacific Forum processes. We were debating to do away with the word South because, of course, we know times had moved on and South was no longer applicable to the vision for a united Pacific voice. So we were in the Kiribati Forum, I think it was in the year 2000, and the FOC officials were there. We debated, those who were there. I think Ambassador Soro was there, or some other colleagues. And then I suggested, Nikkei was there, Ambassador Nikkei, I see. I said, why don't we pull up the equator and get rid of the equator? Then we didn't have to worry about south or north. Whatever we do, it's all to do with helping our people. Anyway, we ended up with those innovative, I think it was the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Fiji, who came with a very, very innovative labeling of SPC to call it Secretariat of the Pacific Community. And everybody else followed, dealt with South, just do it Secretariat of the Pacific Community, or SPREP, Secretariat of the Pacific Environmental Program. And that was the Honorable Wonimbombo of Fiji. So I am reflecting that because I certainly hope, as we heard, that while we are highlighting the importance of South-South cooperation, it has to do with the delivery of service to the people, not the perfecting of the mechanisms or the texts. We have to address the human needs, the humanitarian needs of the people, as we said in Istanbul during the humanitarian summit. So I hope the PIDF doesn't stop at perfecting the mechanisms or the processes, but move on to deliver to the ground, to the grassroots people whose needs are there. And we know from government to the CSOs to other partners as well. So I certainly hope we do not stop in just simply trying to perfect the South-South cooperation. And the reason I'm saying that is this. The SDGs, but particularly regionalizing this or sub-regionalizing into the Samoa pathway, recognizes one basic message: genuine but durable partnerships. Genuine but durable partnerships. It has to do with governments, within government agencies, within government countries, governments and NGOs, and civil societies, private sector. Partnerships have to be durable and genuine. The partnerships cannot be just self-serving and terminating. They have to go on transforming the sustainable development and livelihoods of the people of the Pacific. And I certainly wish that our mission here, PIDF, is to further look beyond the South-South cooperation framework. Why? Because we need that. We don't have to look further than what we have been talking about for the past 20 years since Rio. We, in Barbados, we put those words into text. Then we came to Mauritius, we put those same words into text. And then recently in Samoa, in Apia, we reaffirmed our commitment to addressing the sustainable development needs of the Pacific Island countries, Caribbean, and other regions of SIDS. So I think while we appreciate the reports that have been put to the leaders, I certainly challenge that we continue to further amplify. And I'm saying this with all sense of commitment, that perhaps we need to seriously relook how we can amplify these sentiments at the United Nations at the multilateral level. There is a danger that unilateralism is taking over and breaking down the mechanics, the vehicles and mechanisms of multilateralism. This is very dangerous for SIDS. Are we going to SIDS and continue to sing about South-South cooperation only? Or is it now time for us to move forward and synchronize our efforts so that we can amplify together? Whether it is PIDF, PSIDS in New York, PSIDS in Brussels, PSIDS in Wellington or Canberra. I think we really need to do this. And the reason I'm saying that is this. Our recent experience with the Green Climate Fund, we were one of the first SIDS to be given approved funding to do coastal adaptation project in Tuvalu for 52 million Australian dollars. It is 3 years now. We haven't received a single dollar from the fund. And this is dangerous. While we have been talking about access through collective amplification, we also have to deal with the disbursement of funds, actual disbursement of funds, so that you can start building walls. So I had to travel again to Songdo 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago to again lobby and argue with the board, the secretariat of the DCF, and said, you cannot stop dispersing of approved funding to Tuvalu. That fund is a survival fund. It's not to perfect the mechanisms of the requirements of the donors, but to help the people protect themselves against climate change. And then I had to travel all the way to London to speak to one of the co-chairs of the DCF, Jocelyn. I think you all know him. 2 weeks ago, after coming back and after speaking strongly about this, and with the help of other partners, we got the approval for disbursement. And I think the money is coming right now. So, and the reason I think there is a role for PIDF to collectively use our connections with our South-South cooperation, not for projects, but for advocacy. We have partners who are in G77 in China who are critical to taking the messages across at the United Nations level. We cannot remain complacent. I think we have to be more aggressive and then coordinate with our ambassadors in New York, in Washington, in all chapters of our diplomatic representations. Why? Because the people on the ground keep on waiting for that assistance to arrive. Therefore, I certainly hope that the discussion here will also focus on taking that message forward, not just for money, not just for projects, but for advocacy. I strongly echo what the President of Nauru has said, and we are very grateful for that. South-South cooperation has been happening in the Pacific all these years. We have benefited tremendously from labor mobility under the Nauru Phosphate Company, and also through Fiji, through New Zealand, and other bigger countries. Thank you very much indeed. We got the boulders from Nauru, 2 shipments of large barges from Nauru to help us build the seawalls. We also got boulders from Fiji, and thank you very much to Fiji for your kind assistance to small island countries like Tuvalu. And these are examples of very practical means of helping each other, brotherly help, sisterly help. I won't say how we are putting the boulders in the seawalls in Tuvalu. I think it's the Fiji boulders up on top of the Nauru boulders. I'm sorry, no, it's up to the engineers. But that is the message, and I certainly encourage our colleagues here to further look into ways where we can add to the PIDF the added value, the niche. We don't have to duplicate, but we have to really strategize so that the value comes all the way to the people of the Pacific. I noticed we are going to also look at a possible declaration out of Nandi. Certainly, I would strongly support that we look at the Suva climate change declaration, because it is there that from the Pacific we put in our contribution to the 1.5 degrees Celsius cap. We went then to Port Moresby, to the forum, and we managed to do that language that is now in the Paris Agreement. One particular point that I would like to see in the declaration, perhaps, is, again, funding. If we can amplify further, there is still a need for adequate, predictable funding for adaptation and response to climate change, but also, as I just said, disbursement, earliest disbursement of that funding, I think we are good, because I'm worried the current way things are moving, people are not really forthcoming on replenishment. And this is the time that our platform should work together with our colleagues in PIDF, South-South cooperation members, friends, to further advocate that we need that resilient building funding for replenishment to the GCF and other funding as well. So, Excellencies, colleagues, much has been said already. I don't want to repeat this, but I also need to say that I think from the Pacific, perhaps we need to avoid confusion on languages, on climate change. Perhaps we need to synchronize this nicely, because the audience is not as friendly as we are in this room. The audience is going out to a very, very complicated environment. And if we are sending different messages, PIDF, and next will be the Pacific Island Leaders Forum, we are creating a little bit problem for ourselves. We have to be very, very clear in our message to the world, particularly to the upcoming United Nations Secretary General Climate Change Summit that is to happen in a couple of weeks' time. As a rep of Tuvalu, I also have our delegation here, Honorable Foreign Minister and other ministers and ambassadors. Those who will be in Tuvalu, coming to Tuvalu, you will be most welcome. But you will pay your accommodation in Tuvalu. Thank you very much indeed. Malo Faftai.
Can we give the Honorable Prime Minister another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen? We also wish him well with regards to his campaign for the upcoming elections. Ladies and gentlemen, we move to the final message for the opening ceremony, and I draw your attention to the screens for the video message from the President of Seychelles, His Excellency Danny Four. We'll have that video playing very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. But that will conclude our official welcome ceremony. Once they have it up on the screen, and following that, I will then invite the leaders to move out for the group photograph just at the foyer, and we'll enjoy morning tea. Of course, we're going to have to shuffle a bit, and I'm sure you don't mind, because we have a lot of discussions that will take place today. So we have a little bell. So please don't shoot the messenger when the volunteer comes around, to just ring the bell as a cue for you to make your way back into the room. So we're just going to look at the timing again, and during morning tea, we'll invite you back. So again, I draw your attention to the screen. Thank you. We'll just give it one more try. A very important message here, ladies and gentlemen, has been recorded and sent all the way here to share with you at this very important conference. All right, now we have sound. We'd like to have it also in the monitor in the front of the stage, please. Thank you.
All protocols observed. It is a privilege to address you all, Mr. Prime Minister, fellow leaders, champions of the sustainable development, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is a privilege to address you all at the first Pacific Islands Development Forum conference in Nadi, Fiji. My sincere apologies that I could not be there with you today on this special occasion. But I hope that this contribution proves relevant to discussions over the next 2 days. The theme of this conference, Strengthening South-South Cooperation for a Resilient Pacific, is extremely relevant. Inter-SEADS collaboration and South-South cooperation is crucial to strengthening island resilience and developing sustainable blue economies. The ocean, the beating blue heart of our planet, is key to our search for sustainable, meaningful climate solutions. We cannot achieve the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development without implementing the Paris Agreement on climate change. Climate action needs to be a part of every sustainable development goal. And we can only successfully tackle climate change by strengthening the resilience of our ocean so that it can play its part as the main driver of the global climate. Success against climate change and hence to achieve the SDGs comes only with a healthy ocean, with an exclusive economic zone that is 3,000 times bigger than our landmass. For Seychelles, our ocean is our pathway to prosperity. Our ocean territory brings development opportunities, but also responsibility. By planning properly to protect our environment, we can be sure that we are also protecting our people and their livelihoods against an uncertain future. Seychelles has entered a new era of innovative and sustainable use of the marine environment to leave a better world for future generations to come. Towards that end, with the help of the Commonwealth, we launched our Blue Economy Strategic Policy Framework and Roadmap in October last year, making us one of the first countries in the world to define and clearly explain the blue economy. Our roadmap identifies strategic objectives and priorities for action and investment up to the year 2030, in line with the 2030 Agenda. My country, Seychelles, has committed 30% of our waters to marine protection by the end of next year. This means limiting the use of these marine spaces to carefully regulate activities to achieve long-term conservation and improve the resilience of marine ecosystems. Creating and enforcing marine protected areas means fish stocks can recover despite warming oceans, providing increased food security and additional fishing jobs. The protection project and development of our marine spatial plan for our waters has been funded by a pioneering $22 million debt swap for ocean conservation and climate adaptation. This is a new investment model achieved through the platform of the Global Island Partnership and with the support of creditor countries in the Paris Club and non-profit organizations. The Nature Conservancy. It was the first debt swap designed explicitly for climate adaptation and the first to include impact investments. The debt swap also helps fund all the social conservation and climate adaptation activities. Designing 30% of our EZ as a marine protected area will triple our commitments under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14, 10 years ahead of our schedule. We'll also have achieved the 30 by 30 goal a decade early, protecting 30% of our ocean 10 years before 2030, which scientists say is crucial to protect marine wildlife and mitigate the impacts of climate change. These measures help Seychelles raise its climate ambition by being a leader in ocean climate action through ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change. In October last year, Seychelles launched the world's first sovereign blue bonds to finance our transition to sustainable fisheries. Our $15 million 10-year blue bonds supported by the World Bank and Global Environmental Facility, makes Seychelles the first country to use capital markets to raise funds for the sustainable use of marine resources. The funds are also providing grants and concessionary loans to enable and empower Seychelles, civil society and private sector to help build our blue economy, especially small and medium enterprises and young entrepreneurs. For example, there are blue grants for fisheries reform to enable businesses and artisanal fishermen to improve their value chains and reduce overcapacity and overfishing. It is our sincere hope that our efforts to identify new sources of sustainable finance by leveraging the ocean around us can be replicated and upscaled by other island nations for sustainable development and climate action. Our debt swap agreement is a model for larger deals as conservationists buy a country's sovereign debt in exchange for policy changes that will help the environment. Seychelles' achievements demonstrate that islands' leadership can generate new, innovative ways of achieving twin goals of sustainable development and economic health, unlock critical financing, and forge unique partnerships between the public, private, and non-profit sectors. Partnerships and collaboration between island states is essential to overcome the threats affecting our oceans, economies, and existence today. I am one of the leaders of the Global Island Partnership, or GLISPA, one of the outcomes of the SEEDS meeting in Mauritius in the year 2005. GLISPA is a partnership by islands for islands and played an essential role in Seychelles' blue economy leadership journey. GLISPA focuses on how to support resilient island communities, creating and maintaining political momentum, launching impactful commitments, and catalyzing implementation and action. We connect islanders on common resilience and sustainability issues to help them learn more from each other and collaborate. Besides myself, our GLISPA leaders are the President of Palau, Prime Minister of Grenada, President of the Marshall Islands, and Premier of the British Virgin Islands. We are a voluntary and open partnership with 44 members and more than 100 participating entities. I would like to encourage all of you to become members and work with us to raise the voice of islands and island issues. Islands are microcosms for the planet. We feel global challenges first and most intensely. Despite being the least responsible for climate change, but the most vulnerable to its effects, small island developing states are resiliently leading by example. And we will continue to lead, working to do something about these challenges through advocacy and partnerships. This is why the focus of this conference on South-South cooperation is so important. As we sail towards a sustainable blue economy, anchored in a healthy ocean, it requires a change in mindset. Islands can no longer afford to see ourselves as dots lost in a sea of blue. We are the custodians of 2/3 of our blue planet's surface, and we must act accordingly. I wish you fruitful deliberations over the next few days, and all the best. Regards from my beautiful country to all of you in the Pacific. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Danny Ford, the President of the Seychelles. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the conclusion of our official opening ceremony. And I ask that we give our official party a big round of applause, please. And I also want to extend a sincere appreciation to the Reverend for his blessing this morning. Right. we'll invite the acting chair and also the Secretary General to escort our guests on stage. And I invite also the heads of delegation to please join them for the group photograph that will be taken at the front or just at the foyer. While they move out, ladies and gentlemen, we'll invite all of you as soon as they leave the room to move for morning tea. And we'll have a look very quickly at our schedule. I see that it's already 10:30 where we are scheduled to start the first session, plenary session. So we'll take a 20-minute break for morning tea. And then please, like I said, please don't chase the person who's going to come around to ring the bell. That'll be the cue to start with the first session. Thank you again for your attention. Enjoy your morning tea. Binaka.